Alcohol is not good for you
Yeah.
in any way whatsoever.
There's this classic misconception that alcohol helps you sleep. When you wear a monitor like this and you
Yeah.
see what one unit does. But I think your sleep, as determined by the monitor, is a real strength of yours. Apart from Wimbledon pub crawl.
Shot.
So again, when we look at the days of sleep, we can look at the 2 days you didn't consume alcohol. But what we see with you on the day you did consume alcohol was exactly what we would expect. We see this heightened physiological stress. We see suppressed recovery. And actually, you do pretty well, which does suggest you didn't go too wild on the booze, that you come into
I was in bed
recovery.
by 8:30.
Okay, which is outstanding. So that's how most pub crawls end. It depends what time you start. But principally, you come into recovery second half of the night. But this real suppressed physiological recovery is a traditional pattern that, to me, again, you didn't note alcohol on there, but it looked very much like a pattern of alcohol.
Yeah.
When we look at alcohol, you've got that understanding inbuilt, but you still choose to drink because it was fun.
Alcohol is not good for you in any way whatsoever. There's no health promoting benefits. Even like the phrase, glass of red wine has antioxidants in. I'm sorry, just like eat your pomegranate seeds, your antioxidants, not your red wine. Red wine and alcohol, and any wine in particular, goes hand in hand with what is my joy and how I spend time with the people that I love. I don't excessively drink. That is my choice. I always create space and days and gaps and make sure that I do things like prioritize my nutrition and my movement around alcohol just to make sure it's that kind of like beautiful art of balance. I'm not an extreme person. I never cuss anything out. Yeah. I love a Cadbury's bar. Of course, it's not full of the best stuff, but I don't want to eat 90% dark chocolate. That's just not what makes me happy.
Yes.
And I think people have to really understand that I can still be healthy and I can still feel like a real valuable nutritionist and do things that aren't necessarily textbook healthy, because not everything has to be perfect and perfectly healthy. But I think we always have to understand our relationship with the things that can be slightly more destructive. Yeah. And I think the sobriety movement has created a lot of awareness that people's relationship with alcohol is not good.
Yes.
People feel very out of control. They rely on it as a coping mechanism, as an outlet, as a stress outlet, and they drink to get drunk. Yeah. Whereas that Wimbledon pub day for me is such a lovely calendar moment for me and my husband. We walk all the way to Wimbledon. We've got our favourite little cosy pub, fireplace in, glass of red wine comes. We have a couple of little nibbly bits, and then we walk to the shop, we get all the stuff that we're going to make for dinner, and then we'll cook for date night, and we'll make something homemade and lovely, and we'll sit there probably with another glass of red wine. And that for me is so nourishing and wholesome for my soul. And it's so good for both my mind. And I always think life and nutrition and all the stuff has to nourish both your body and your mind. And looking after the two is key.
I think that's a great description. And that sobriety movement has done a great deal of good. But some people get that social well-being, that sense of joyfulness, that ritual that they've adhered to. And we can't demonize alcohol. You're spot on, and there's no healthy dose, but there may be a healthy situation.
Yeah.
And I think there again, we say, your overall sleep score is 72. And you've had one night which is influenced by the alcohol, but then you offset it with 2 fantastic nights where there isn't the alcohol there. So
exactly.
that is the living depiction of what balance looks like. If we'd had 3 nights like that, you wouldn't have had the energy on day 4 that you would expect. When I first started measuring sleep in clinical environments, that's when I really got interested in helping people understand alcohol. Because there's this classic misconception that alcohol helps you sleep. And if any of you wear one of these sleep trackers or a device that tracks your recovery levels on your wrist, on your ring, or somewhere else, you might notice that alcohol has a very strange relationship with sleep, rest, and recovery. In most cases, it compromises it enormously. It kills it. Alcohol does help us fall asleep, what we call sleep latency, how quickly from hitting the pillow, I'm into the land of dreams. But sleep isn't about time spent asleep. I could spend 7, 8, 9, 10 hours asleep. What I want from sleep is to go through these different cycles and stages of sleep that do different things for my body. Deep sleep, restoring memory and growth. Rapid eye movement, or dream state sleep, where I process all my emotions and have a huge role on my creative brain. What we see with alcohol, it may help me fall into a state of sleep, but it kills those 2 stages in particular. Deep sleep and rapid eye movement or REM sleep are massively reduced under the presence of even a single glass of an alcoholic drink. That's devastating. And what's really challenging is that often people use alcohol as a part of their approach to falling asleep because they're wired. They've had an intense day. The guests we've had on the energy equation lead high-performing lives. They have a huge volume of stress. And under stressful situations, the body does build muscle tension. It does feel that heightened sense of anxiousness. And alcohol comes in, rides in on its horse, and relieves some of those symptoms. It's a muscle relaxant. It has a short-term impact on improving the neurotransmitter dopamine that, again, makes me feel uplifted. It has a small-term influence on serotonin, the neurotransmitter that makes me feel happy. It has a small-term impact on reducing muscle tension, which makes me feel relaxed. It feels like a good stress relievant. But what it's actually doing is compromising my biggest opportunity to get over stress, which is sleep. And then what we're finding increasingly is that people who regularly consume even small doses of alcohol have a slightly higher stress response the rest of the time. So it may take away that short-term feeling of stress, but actually, through changing our body's relationship with a hormone called cortisol, it interferes with my stress levels the next day, the day after, and forevermore. So alcohol is a false dawn. It's dressed up as a stress relaxer, but really, in many ways, it's a stress incubator, and that's really difficult to hear. Your great-grandparents got something from drinking water that you probably don't. Over the last century, we've made water safer to drink, on the whole, but something has been lost in the process. Natural water sources once provided essential minerals that our bodies evolved with over thousands of years. Today's water, even premium bottled at source water, contains 78% fewer minerals than it did just a century ago. In fact, you'd have to drink 1.5 bathtubs to replenish the minerals that you lose in a litre of sweat. So if you think your water is hydrating you optimally, think again. Pure Sport, a company that I personally trust and use, solves this problem for high performers through their ultra electrolytes, a science-backed ratio of electrolytes in one single sachet. Optimize your hydration and leave the bath for bathing. Use our exclusive discount code EE10 at www.puresport.co for 10% off. So the sleep score out of 100 on this one is 53.
What am I doing? I'm in bed.
You are. I'll go to why one of the nights isn't good, because it's not.
I know
what
it is. It's alcohol.
Well, you put it on.
I knew that.
You wrote it on your diary, which
I
makes
know.
you, an excellent guest.
I think I exaggerated, actually. I think it was only 3 units, but it was still made a difference.
I think when you wear a monitor like this and you see what 1 unit does,
Wow.
it's such a sensitivity from a sleep point of view.
I know this.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean it's not worth it.
Yeah.
Was it worth it?
Was it worth it?
Whoever you were with might be listening.
No, it was definitely worth it. I can't tell you what I'd done, but I'd done something really exciting, and it was a celebration.
all I can say.
So it was definitely
sometimes it's worth it. And actually, look, what when we look at your sleep on
it
the
was
graph,
champagne. Does that help?
It does.
Probably
it does
not
actually
really.
help. If it's one of the purest forms of alcohol. So, which is why it's pricey. But the reality is,
one was bad. Yeah,
when you have the alcohol, and there's lots of excitement at the time you had the alcohol. So the monitor thought you were exercising. So again, I'll ask no further questions.
Funny.
But
I wasn't.
Yeah.
I'll tell you when we're not here what I was doing.
But this is great.
It's all above board, and it would be on the telly, so it's fine.
Oh,
but anyway,
even more
so
exciting.
I can't tell you.
Well, and again, your recovery is suppressed those first 2 hours.
Yeah.
Then you're into beautiful, rich recovery. And when we look at this, do you go into good recovery? You do. Mm-hmm. You just have these sort of fragmented that you're. If I had to sort of put that into layman's terms, you're keeping one eye on the world still a little bit.
It sort of doesn't surprise me, but how do I stop doing that?
I suppose
I don't go to sleep quickly either. I know that. It takes me ages to go to sleep.
So there's not,
I think.
If we take this night as a normal night, you'll see that you haven't gone into huge recovery in the 2 hours before you go to bed. So your body
before I go to bed.
So what we do before sets the tone for what happens when we're in. So have you ever committed into sort of that 90 minutes, 2 hours of ritualistic behaviour?
I do have ritualistic behaviour. So I will basically, what I do is, and it won't be 2 hours before, I will always have a bath before I go to bed, and I will always read a book.
Okay.
So I have probably 40 minutes.
That's great. That's exactly the sweet spot. It's that case of, how do I convince my brain
Yeah.
that it needs to deal with nothing until tomorrow morning.